you, Anne. And yeah, like literally Wednesday, I became an empty nester. And this is great because I don't have to think about it because I could be here with all you wonderful people. I was fortunate to be in Milwaukee with Gail and Tabitha and Susie for the platform. And it was an experience, I'm not going to lie. And I like to say, before I get into my speech, that the document that came out of Milwaukee, it wasn't a platform, it was a campaign agenda, because party platforms lay out what the party believes and goes into detail and things like that. So we have the Trump campaign agenda, and that's fine. That's what it is. And in 4 years, we will have a true party platform again. And you all in this room are tasked with the responsibility of getting involved in your local party, getting elected to be a delegate on the local level and then the state level and become delegates to the convention, get on the platform committee, and then in 4 years, we will not have what we have right now. So that is your job that I am tasking you with as soon as November 5th is over. I want to start with a quote from one of our candidates. I think it's very important for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present. And that is Kamala Harris. And it is a bunch of gobbledygook. But I want to talk about why this moment in time, this decision that we have to make in November or sooner, if you live in a state with early voting, is so important. We can't go back and we can't change the results of the last election. So this election coming up is the most important one that we have because it is the one where we get to make a difference. We get to decide the outcome, what kind of country we want to have, and whether or not we want to see that country thrive for the next 4 years. The liberal Democrats like to tell us that this is the most important election and that we face an existential threat to our democracy. Now, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic with a representative democracy. So even in their talking points, they can't get it right. But they like to say that this election's existential threat to the end of America or a new way forward. And I would say that the new way forward they're offering is a quasi-socialistic future. And things do look dark because the radical Marxists are taking over in our mainstream culture, and the Republican Party seems to, at times, a little confused about the way forward. We know that our families and our children are under assault from the radical gender ideology. They are redefining the terms sex, gender, marriage, pronouns. We see them celebrating abortion, euthanasia, embryo destruction. They are the 1 and 2 issues for the Democrats. It's abortion on demand and transing the kids. Those are, if you listen to their speeches, those are in every speech that they give. But we need to remember the fight isn't new. Ecclesiastes, or as Kamala likes to say, ecclesiastics, tells us that there is nothing new under the sun. So the candidates have changed over the years, obviously, and changed in the last few months. But our fundamental values and our conservative principles have not changed. It was 60 years ago that Phyllis published A Choice, Not an Echo. That was 3 million copies, no advertising. But in that, she explained the role of the kingmakers in selecting the presidential nominees, especially in the Republican Party. And she helped Barry Goldwater get the nomination in 1964. And really helped birth the modern conservative movement. But once Barry Goldwater got the nomination, he didn't win, but he was under attack. He was under attack from the from the establishment Republicans, as well as the media. Their goal was to smear him and to destroy him. The LA Times said at the time that the moderns in the Republican Party loosed upon Goldwater a storm of accusations and innuendo, spreading shocking tales, suggesting he perhaps was in league with the neo-Nazis in Germany. The Kingmaker's chosen candidate at the time was Pennsylvania Governor William Scranton, a Republican, who said that Goldwater was not just wrong, but evil. And the liberal media claimed that he was a loose cannon warmonger who opposed Social Security. There was a group of 1,189 psychiatrists who signed onto a statement saying he was unfit to be president. And that actually caused the American Psychiatric Association to put up something called the Goldwater Rule, which said that unless you actually treated somebody and did an examination on them, you could not make a statement on their mental health. Of course, they threw that out in 2016. But what I'm trying to say here is it's nothing new. These threats that we see, this existential threat, this is an evil Hitlerian, he's going to take away your Social Security. This has been around since at least 1964. At least 1964. The left has demonized every single candidate who had a shred of conservative policies. They reject every traditional value and constitutional provision that we seek to maintain. That is their entire goal. Now, I could spend the next 20 minutes talking about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris and their personalities and how Kamala ended up doing this big palace coup and threw Joe Biden out the window. But, Eagle Forum's always been the organization that focused on the issues, that focused on the policies, because those are the things that never change, no matter who our nominees are. And those, some of those same policies that when I started in Eagle Forum in 1994, we're still fighting today. And I know Phyllis and you all have been fighting since the 1970s. So let's talk about the big policy themes that are at issue here in this campaign. Trump and the Republicans, they have their theme of Make America Great Again. And at the convention, they had Make America Wealthy Again, Make America Safe Again, Make America Strong Again. And now RFK has come onto the scene and he's talking about making America healthy again. And that's a great return to strong values, strengths of the past. And those are all great values. The DNC, their whole convention was based on freedom. And we're the party of freedom. I mean, I was watching that convention. I was seeing red, white, and blue and flags. And I was like, wow, they know where it's at. They have just co-opted the message of freedom. But then last week, Kamala went on Oprah, her interview with Oprah, and she explained exactly what she means about freedom. And this is her quote: freedom to make decisions about your own body, freedom to be safe from gun violence, freedom to be who you are and just be, to love who you love openly and with pride. So for her, freedom means abortion on demand, taking away our guns, gay pride, and trans rights. That is their definition of freedom. Now, I don't think that was the definition of our founding fathers. Kamala also loves to say, and she has said it again and again, that we as a nation need to see what can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been? What does this mean? What can be in Kamala's world, her worldview? It's really a Marxist utopia, a godless society, and what can be is a redefinition of normal, of truth, of what is good and true and beautiful. Unburdened by what has been. What has been is our traditional values. What has been is the idea that she's a moderate. What has been is a kooky idea that there are things called boys and girls, and they're not interchangeable, and you can't switch from one or another. So the things that Kamala wants to be unburdened from are the values of faith, family, and freedom. Those values that we hold so dear. And the things that she wants to see, what can be, is this whole idea of a world unburdened by history. That is a Marxist incantation. Mao's China, he wanted to get rid of the four olds: the old customs, the old ideas, the old cultures, and the old habits. And when we talk about being unburdened from our past, that is what Kamala wants to do. That's what the radical leftists want to do. The Soviets tried to do it when they tried to create the new man for the new Russia. This is, again, nothing new under the sun. So let's start with the life issue. What can be unburdened by what has been? What can be, in the radical leftist view, is abortion on demand. Because in her view, the ultimate freedom for women is to be unburdened by our role as creators of new life. That's what she sees. It's not just a return to Roe, but a constitutional right to kill children in the womb with no restrictions. She doesn't want us to go back even to Roe, although she does want to get rid of the filibuster, to put abortion on demand, to pass a national abortion rights bill, and she wants to get rid of the filibuster. Think about that. That would just throw out the whole Senate structure. And it's really interesting because Kristen A from Arizona said it's the stupidest thing in the world, because if you throw out the filibuster to put abortion on demand, to pass a law for abortion on demand, if Republicans get control, they can pass a national abortion ban by 50 votes or 51 votes. So even Kirsten Sinema was like, Kamala, I don't think you should say that. But anyway, their whole movement is radical pro-abortion. Remember this, she was the first vice president to visit an abortion mill. They had a mobile abortion clinic outside their convention. I mean, you might think you're being hyperbolic about this, but these are their values. This is what can be. Abortion mobile vans outside providing abortion pills and free vasectomies. That is not pro-life. That is not pro-family. They believe abortion is health care. They had a military training video where they referred to pro-lifers as domestic terrorists. They want to force doctors and pharmacists to perform abortions and provide abortion pills. They want our daughters to be able to get abortions without our consent, without our notification. They want the abortion pill to be available without a doctor even examining you, a pregnant woman, to see if she's suffering from an ectopic pregnancy or if she's too far along in the pregnancy to actually take the abortion pill. The bottom line is they see abortion as a disease and children as nothing more than choice. And they also believe, of course, that men can get pregnant. And that is why we need to talk about the next issue, which is our movement to protect life cannot stop when the baby is born, because once our children are born, the gender ideologues, the queer theorists want to come and destroy our children even after they're born. And this is the second big thing about their whole movement. What can be is to divorce biology from reality, and so that you get to pick your sex. You can be a boy one day, you can be a girl the next, you can wear whatever you want, and that will make you a woman or a man. And what do they want to be unburdened from? Human nature, biological reality, the sexual binary nature of men and women. They want a world of total freedom to ignore science, redefine reality, and lie to our very children. And every speaker at the DNC convention, after they talked about reproductive freedom, they talked about loving who you want to love and being who you want to be. And that is just the code words for the trans ideology. And Kamala Harris, even before the convention, went on RuPaul's Drag Race show to announce that she had secured the nomination. That is where her heart lies. That is where their ideology lies. And when we look at how that is put into practice, you know, we talked about it this weekend, the whole Title IX, where you're redefining sex and gender. Misgendering can be seen as harassment. They are suing. The Biden-Harris administration is suing states like Alabama for their laws that protect children. Tim Walz, the vice presidential nomination, has made Minnesota a sanctuary state so that children can go there if their parents are, quote unquote, not affirming their new identity. Now, to me, affirming a child in their identity is saying, son, you're a man. Daughter, you're a woman. That's affirming. But to them, we know is the opposite. You need to affirm them in their disbelief, in their dysphoria. I mean, Tim Walz, come on, he's putting tampons in the boys' bathrooms at school. And what does that do to our children? That's all subtle psychological warfare to tell them that, well, I don't know, maybe you can choose. You know, A.G. Marshall reminded us about Rachel Levine wanting to get rid of any age restrictions on these genital mutilation surgeries. So that's what it looks like for them, for gender ideology, to what can be unburdened by what has been. And in education, what can be unburdened by what has been, what can be is these radical ideologies in the schools, CRT, diversity, equity, and inclusion, this radical trans stuff. And what they want to be unburdened from is your right to impact what happens into the school, to know what's happening in the school, and to have a voice and a choice in your child's education. Under their worldview, only one option is acceptable: the public schools that will indoctrinate your children. They want public schools to be unburdened by the parents, so we won't ever know what is even happening in the schools. And thank goodness the Republican Party sees parents as the fundamental people responsible for the care and upbringing of their children. And Donald Trump has even said he wants to abolish the Department of Education in order to return it to the constitutional structure, which education belongs at the state and local level, not at the federal level. And so, you know, right there is a very strong statement. And people are saying, can you believe he wants to abolish education? No. He wants to turn it back to the parents and the local communities where it belongs. The platform that Gail talked about, in it, President Trump said he supports students' right to pray and read the Bible in school. So he's supporting the traditional values that are so important to us. Another issue where Kamala wants to imagine what can be unburdened by what has been is our border. She wants a wide open border. We have seen this just from Mark Morgan yesterday telling us the news that came out yesterday that we have thousands of murderers and rapists in our country. But she went down to the border to, I guess, talk about how we need to let more people through. I don't even know what she said yesterday, but she is now again trying to co-opt this strong border message. But she was the border czar, and we can only assume, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, that she took her job as border czar very, very seriously. Because what she can imagine in her worldview is countries without borders, where we're just letting people in, that there are no laws against citizenship. She's laid out in her statements that she wants a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, farm workers, care workers, and anyone who has been here for any length of time. She has been on record wanting to defund Immigration and Customs enforcement. And again, going back to that gender ideology that is so important, she wants to use federal funds for sex reassignment surgeries for detained illegal immigrants. She said that in 2019, and she has not disavowed that statement. On the other side, we know that Republicans want strong borders. We want to vet who comes into this country. We want to make sure that our legal immigration system is strong, but that we're keeping out the people who are violating our laws and the people who are harming our citizenry. When we look at the issues of energy and the economy, again, Kamala wants to be unburdened by what has been. Our energy independence that has given our economy so much of strength, right? They have said that their administration, in the name of fighting global warming and controlling the economy, they have the most aggressive climate agenda in history. They have committed $11 billion to fight climate over the years to come. That means no energy independence. That means no choice in appliances and automobiles, as we've talked about. That means the government gets to say what you can buy and what you can sell, and they're calling it freedom. And that is not freedom. For the economy, their idea of economic freedom means rent controls, price controls, mortgage subsidies, forgiving student loans, as we heard from A.G. Bailey, and increased taxes, getting rid of right-to-work laws, and supporting paying people not to work. In their view, the archaic idea that there's dignity in work needs to be thrown out. They want to make people the slaves of the state, and the state will provide everything you need, including your college tuition and your food. It's all going to be processed, of course, and probably from overseas. And yet Republicans have a different vision on the other side of energy independence, of helping by giving us a strong energy sector. We are going to turn our economy around. We're not just going to rely on the handouts and the subsidies. And I just want to say, as Anne has designed this new bumper sticker, it is the economy, stupid. It still is, in this election, the economy, stupid. We don't want to become slaves of our government where they get to decide how much money we have and what we get to keep. Finally, on the issue of national security and national sovereignty, again, there's a very, very different issue differences between the parties. As Elaine Donnelly told us yesterday about the threats to our military, turning our military into a social experiment, unburdening it from its goal to provide for the security of the United States, and imagining what it can be with DEI promotions and critical race theory and abortions and trans surgeries for our military. We want to reject all that. We want to get back to our traditional values of a strong national defense. And when it comes to the WHO and the UN, again, oh my gosh, this is a dream come true. What will we see in the next 4 years if Kamala and Tim Walz get in? They love these international organizations. They want to give away our sovereignty. And you would think it's crazy that they want to do that, but they're part of that power structure where they can tell not only us what to do, but the rest of the world as well. And again, one of the things that I think they want to be unburdened from is our Constitution, especially our First Amendment rights of free speech. I just want to read you a couple quotes about free speech. Tim Walz went on MSNBC and he said, "There is no guarantee of free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy. So you don't have the right to free speech to criticize your government or the way it's being run," under Tim Walz. Hillary Clinton actually said that people should be prosecuted criminally for spreading misinformation if they spread information that some Russians happen to also say. Well, I'm no fan of Russia, but my speech is not going to be judged by whether some random Russian has mentioned the same thing. And Gavin Newsom just passed a bill to ban memes that were offensive to candidates, that demeaned candidates. I mean, these are the two worldviews that we must face when we're looking at this election. And as Gail said, everything is not perfect in the Republican Party, and the conservative movement is in a bit of a disarray. And that's where you and I can work together to really make change. I was in a meeting before we went to Milwaukee with Penny Nance from CWA and someone from ADF and Ralph Reed from Values Voters and all these different people. And Ed Martin was there because he was the platform guy who came in and he was supposed to tell us about how the platform was going to be great on life or something. I don't know. And Penny Nance was so funny. She's a good friend of mine. And she held up Phyllis's book and she said to Ed, Ed, one of the great things about Phyllis was she could love you and she'd be your friend and she could help you get elected. But when you did something wrong, she would say, I'm sorry, that's wrong. You need to stop doing that. And so, you know what? If we're fortunate enough to have Donald Trump reelected in November, we're going to spend a lot of time going up to his administration and saying, I'm sorry, you're wrong. You need to stop doing that. Just as Becky did in Alabama against her friends and her governor who are pushing for gambling, we need to harness our inner Phyllis and be willing to say, I'm sorry that you're my friend. I helped you get elected, but that's not right. So whoever is elected in November, we're going to have to continue to fight. But we have a chance, if that is the Republicans, in a way that we really don't, if the Democrats, who are more radical than they have ever been before, get reelected. Is it an existential threat? We will go on because we are Christians, we are people of faith, and we know that the Lord is on our side. But we need to elect the most conservative people possible. And that goes from president all the way down to school board in your local community. We need to stand up for our Constitution, for the 10th Amendment, for our First Amendment rights and liberties, but most important, as Gail said, for the babies and for our children, because their worldview is to abortion on demand, because children are just not important, and then to go after our children with a radical ideology to separate children from their families and to destroy the fundamental nature of who our children are. So I encourage you to get out there and vote, to spread the word to your neighbors, your community. In your program, we put our extended voter guide for you all that lists all the things that I've talked about and more, about the differences between the parties and the differences between the promises that the candidates have made. We will be releasing in a couple weeks a one-pager that's way scaled down that might be easier to hand out. But if you want to have the background information, we have that for you. The future of our country really depends on good men and women getting out there and getting involved. So the one thing that we can all do right now is to get out there and vote, and to get your family and your friends and all those you know to vote, and vote for our traditional values, our conservative values, and against this radical Marxist ideology that the leftist party now is pushing down our throats. So thank you very much.